then what would be very helpful to do would be, particularly midweek, take that day off. Break the week up, the 5 days. Take the middle day off, or at least half a day off, and spend that time doing some extra practice, developing ourselves. So even if we're in a family situation and we have an understanding partner, then you might say every Tuesday, Wednesday, every week, morning time, that's my time to quiet. So switch off all the mobile phones and just spend that time to reflect, meditate, and develop ourselves. And you'll find then that better harmony at home, better productivity in work, everything improves. So it's not like we're losing out. There's always this fear that, in the company, that if we give them one day off, we'll lose productivity. But actually, they've shown that that's not the case, actually. In fact, it's better to do that. And then if we start to do some more solitary work, then I think what can be helpful as a sort of a midway is we can use then audio from a group retreat as structure. So if we wanted to do a one-day retreat at home, then we can use the recording from one day of the retreat as the structure, or at least a couple of sessions. So then we have some structure to follow, and it's not self-motivating and we have to develop the structure ourselves. So that can be very helpful as a way to begin to do a little bit of more solitary work. So that's just a little bit of general advice. Before I go on to look at how we can sort of structure the day, is there any questions about any of that I've covered so far? Okay, so let's now look then how to set up the day. Of course, very helpful each morning to set a good motivation for the day, because that's going to start the day in a good direction, and then hopefully that will direct the day in a good direction. One motivation that I particularly like is one from His Holiness Dalai Lama, who says, every day think as you wake up. Today I am fortunate to have woken up. I am alive. I have a precious human life. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. And the short version of that is, every day, think as you wake up, I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. I think this is a very good motivation to start the day. And then, of course, daily meditation practice is very much recommended that we do that first thing in the morning, because it's usually when we're most fresh. It's a good way to start the day, of course, and also usually most quiet where we are. And very helpful, particularly as a beginner, to meditate at the same time every day. Because one of the most difficult things with having a daily meditation practice is simply developing the habit. And if we keep changing the time when we meditate each day, we're not developing a habit. So pick a time that works for you and stick to it. And to help develop a habit, set a challenge. We like challenges. So initially you say, okay, for the next week, for the next 7 days, I'm going to meditate at this time every day. And once we've done that a few times, then the next challenge is, for the next 30 days, I'm going to meditate at that time every day. And studies show that to begin to develop a habit, we have to do something at least 20-25 days in a row. So if we can do a couple of 7-day challenges and then do a 30-day challenge, then we're starting to develop a habit. And again, as a beginner, particularly as a beginner in this stage, don't try to meditate too long. Quality over quantity, particularly when we're developing a habit. Because if we start too much, it'll be too difficult, we'll give up. So just start with something anything, even 10 or 15 minutes, just to develop the habit. But always emphasize, and then once we start to develop the habit, but then still emphasize quality over quantity. Meaning, if we want to meditate then a little bit more in the morning, maybe 30 minutes, but we can't sustain that, then do a little bit like we did here before breakfast. Break that into 2 short sessions. So maybe 2 15-minute sessions with a little 2-minute break. Always emphasize quality over quantity. Very helpful, again, particularly as a beginner, when we meditate, to use a timer. Because if we don't use a timer, like I used a timer in this retreat, one of 2 things can often happen. On some days where we sit down to meditate, maybe we have a lot of aches and pains in the body, restlessness, agitation in the mind, and we sit down, we try to relax and get into it, and it's really not working at all, and we try for 5 or 10 minutes and go, oh, it's too difficult, and we stop. That's not a good habit to get into. Because if we just simply keep giving up when things get a little bit difficult, we're never going to progress. Same as in daily life in general. We need to develop a quality of perseverance. And so therefore, if we set a timer, then on days where things are really a little bit difficult, we'll persevere. So we'll develop that quality of perseverance when in the face of difficulty. And on other days, though, if we don't set a timer, maybe things on that day are going really well. And our mind is very focused, it's very calm, we're enjoying the meditation. And then we go, oh, it's very nice today. And then what happens is we just keep meditating because we're enjoying it. And then what do? We keep meditating until when? Until it's not going so well, and we stop. And the thing we remember most about meditation is how it ended. So if we're always ending in disappointment or frustration, that's what we're going to associate with meditation. And we're not going to want to meditate again the next day. Whereas if we set a timer, it's going well, we stop, we remember that, we'll be very enthusiastic to meditate again the following day. Also, in this retreat I used an app called Insight Timer. So there are a number of timers, of course, available. Insight Timer I find very helpful. It has all sorts of different bells you can use for your own preference, and you can program it very well. Multiple short sessions with breaks and all of that fancy things you can do on that, of course. And also with Insight Timer, there are a lot of guided meditations available that you can listen to do the meditation. In fact, I'm starting to put some of my meditations up there, and I want to do a lot more work on that this summer, this year, to really put a lot of different meditations, and also you can follow little online courses there. So I want to also put some online courses on there as well. And it can be very helpful initially to listen to guided meditations to become familiar with the practice, particularly those more analytical practices that have a number of steps. But then what I recommend is don't just keep listening to guided meditations, because you'll get lazy. You'll just hit the play button, you'll sit there, and you're sort of kind of listening, but you're not really, and you think you're meditating, and then we're not really meditating. So once we have learnt the practice well, then let go of listening and just do it yourself. But then maybe some weeks or months later, it's sometimes useful to go back and listen again, because sometimes our practice starts to deviate, or we forget things, or we introduce things that are not in the practice, and we're starting to go a little bit astray in our practice. And then if we listen again some weeks or months later, we go, oh, actually, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing like this, aren't I? And that can pull us back on track. And the other thing also, as I mentioned, one of the big reasons we get distracted when we meditate, particularly as a beginner, is noise. So again, try to find a quiet place to meditate. If you're not in a quiet place, again, I recommend these noise-cancelling headphones. They can really be very, very helpful. What to meditate on? What we've seen in this retreat is there are really 3 main practices that we're focusing on. The Shamatha, and then on that basis the Vipashyana and the compassion practices. And what we've seen a little bit also is that there are these what's called preliminary practice, foundation practices. Like briefly mentioned, the precious human life and death. So again, if we're stuck in laziness, then of course we're not going to do any of these things. So then things like precious human life and death can be very helpful to overcome that. And of course, the basis is ethical lifestyle. But then, of course, what we've seen here is that the sort of foundation practice of those three is Shamatha practice. The practice of cultivating a calm, clear, focused mind. Because if we don't put effort into that, then we can put effort into the compassion and Vipashyana type practices but not really get much benefit because our mind is distracted and half asleep. So then particularly as a beginner, if our attention skills are not very well developed, is Shamatha, is to really put some emphasis in the Shamatha practice. And we saw there that the recommendation, of course, is use the object that works best for you. So, of course, in this retreat, we focused on three particular objects, the breath. So with the breath, of course, we had a number of variations there, the full body and the rhythm of the breath. Both of those were particularly good for relaxation. So remember again, the basis of this practice is relaxation. So really, if we find a lot of agitation and tension, then just work on that. Just work on that. And you may need to work on that for weeks or months. Just relax, 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 relax. And again, if you find that sitting upright, even focusing on the rhythm of the breath or the full body is difficult to relax, then use the Shavasana posture. You'll find that will probably work a lot better. So if we really have a lot of agitation and tension, if that's our normal default mode, then I highly recommend using the Shavasana posture as your normal meditation posture. Much easier to relax. However, of course, if we're the sort of person that drifts easily into dullness and drowsiness, I wouldn't recommend doing the Shavasana posture as your normal meditation posture. You're just going to get some more sleep. That's all that's going to happen. So we know from our own experience the type of person we are, and so then whether or not to use that Shavasana posture. So again, relaxation, the basis. And again, that full body breath practice and the rhythm is very good for that. And then of course we have the other two practices of the abdomen and the nostrils for the breath practice. And probably for many of us, the breath practice, one of those variations is probably going to be the best object to use, certainly in the initial stages, because many of you probably found that trying to observe the mind was not easy, and maybe even the resting in awareness was not easy. So then start with the breath. Stay with the breath. Weeks, months, longer maybe. And then if we get deeper into that practice, our mind becomes more relaxed, more stable, more clear. Then later, if you want, then you can switch into observing the mind or resting in awareness, as Alamolos was suggesting as one option. But we don't have to, of course, we just stay with the breath. If you found, for example, resting in awareness was something that you could get into, then you can use that from the very beginning. You don't have to start with the breath. That you can use that from the very beginning to do the practice. And then, of course, how to choose which object is best is not necessary. So what can be often helpful is you do each one of these for some time. So maybe you spend some weeks or a month or so doing the breath practice, and then maybe a month doing the observing the mind, a month resting in awareness. So give it some little bit of a chance to see what your experience is, and then you can choose which one you think will be most effective. But part of the choosing is not necessarily the one that's easiest, because maybe the breath is the easiest, but we find it quite boring. So if we're not enthusiastic about it, we're not going to get anywhere. So either we get enthusiastic about the breath, or we don't use that, we find another object. Because if we're not enthusiastic, we're just going to sit there and get dull and get caught up in daydreams. And then, of course, we need to take that into the day, that practice, and we'll talk about how to do that shortly. The other two main groups there, of course, was the Vipashyana, the insight practice, and the compassion wing of practice. So in that Vipashyana aspect of practice, we had the four insights we were working with in this retreat: impermanence, suffering, no self, and emptiness. And so impermanence can often be a very good place to start with Vipashyana practice, particularly with respect to the body, a little bit like we were doing that body scan. Because by focusing on the body, it really helps us to get out of our discursive mind. And many of us are really caught up in a lot of obsessive compulsive thinking. So that sort of Vipashyana practice can help us to get out of that into the body. And the body is a little bit easier to focus on in Vipashyana than the mind. And so then we can really start to have some tangible benefit from that impermanence practice by focusing on the body. And then also that insight into suffering, to really come to appreciate the source of our happiness is not out there, to really help us to shift that worldview, that the source of happiness and source of suffering is within ourselves. And then, of course, that practice of no self, of releasing the grasp into self, is going to be very helpful in reducing mental afflictions and suffering. And then, of course, the insight into emptiness. That in this retreat we were focusing on two methods to do that. One, the sort of classic where is me the person approach, and then the other approach that's used often in Mahamudra Dzogchen is looking at the mind. Where is this mind? Where is this awareness, this nature of mind? So we can use either of those two approaches, whichever of those two sort of resonates with us more, to use that approach. And then, of course, the compassion wing, we saw those four immeasurables, the four qualities: loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. And then on that basis, we engaged in that Tonglen practice. So the Tonglen practice can be very helpful because it really covers most of those qualities in one practice. But then also I think what's very helpful in the modern world is to do this empathetic joy practice. I think you did that with Maya this morning, because in our modern world we're really focusing so much on the negative. So to really spend some time focusing on the positives of ourselves and the people around us, to get that balanced view. And here's a very nice quote I like from William James, modern day philosopher, who said, "For the moment, what we attend to is reality." So if we're always attending to the negative, that becomes our reality. So to really spend some time focusing on the positives. Because if we're only focusing on the negative, we tend to do that with cognitive fusion. That'll really drag us down. And then how to balance these three practices. Again, I think as a beginner, particularly if our attention skills are not very well developed, to really emphasize the Shamatha. But not to neglect the Vipashyana and compassion. To really bring them in as well. And how we balance, we can adjust depending on what's going on in our life. If we find that our sort of kindness and compassion is really dropping away dramatically for ourselves and others, more of that can practice. If we find that there's a lot of grasping and a lot of mental afflictions, a craving, attachment and so forth coming up, then more the Vipashyana practice to release that. So that we can adjust according to depending on what's going on in our life. And then of course we need to bring all of this into daily life. We need to continue to work on this, because if we don't, then what little benefit we've received in the meditation in the morning will be easily overrun by mindlessly reacting to things throughout the day. And so the key here is mindfulness. If we want to bring this into the day, to really continue to cultivate mindfulness. Of course we can just say, oh, I'm going to be as mindful as possible each morning, but probably after 5 minutes we've forgotten that. So rather, we, as a beginner, we really need to use triggers to remind us to be mindful. And those triggers can take different forms. One classic form is specific activities. That now, whenever you do specific activities, a classic example is brushing teeth. Most of us do that at least 2 or 3 times a day. That when you're doing that activity, be fully present with that activity. And not be brushing your teeth and thinking about all the things we've got to do that day. Be fully present with it. It's a mindfulness exercise. Similarly, eating meals. Now often we're eating meals and thinking about all sorts of other things, but be fully present with that activity and you'll probably enjoy the meal a lot more as well. So that can help us to be more mindful, but also we can use apps to help us. I mean, the smartphones have been shown, of course, to be one of the big culprits in why our attention levels are actually going downhill with each new generation, the smartphone. So rather than being a hindrance to our attention, we can use them to our advantage. Again, there's various apps, mindfulness apps, that you can program that every so often during the day, maybe once an hour, they give you a little signal. When you hear that, you stop whatever you're doing and you're simply fully, and then you do a little mindfulness exercise. Maybe for 3 breaths, you just focus on your breathing. Or for 3 breaths, you look at your mind or rest in awareness. Just do a little short mindfulness exercise. Keep it short, otherwise we won't do it. And just seed the day with those bits of mindfulness, and we'll start to become more and more mindful throughout the day. We'll develop that habit. And of course, that as part of that, this resting in awareness practice is very helpful. Because then, now our mind tends to be like this in the day. And then of course we saw that analogy, that if some little stimulus comes, we react, like the water in the cup analogy. Whereas if we can really, as part of that mindfulness, is really, particularly if we're doing that resting in awareness practice, to really keep that very open, spacious mind as much as possible, have that as our default mode, then you'll find that whatever stimulus comes, you'll be able to be more fully present with it, and rather than react, then respond in a more appropriate way. And also, again, whenever we're doing any sort of physical activity, switch off the blah, blah, blah mind. Just be fully present in that physical activity. And that's also going to be very helpful. And of course, avoid this cognitive fusion. That we need to shift the way in which we think and speak. Because otherwise, we're going to react. So again, if someone's behaving badly, rather than see there's a bad person, simply see there's a person engaging in harmful behaviour. And then you'll find it's going to be much easier to respond with compassion rather than react with anger. Similarly toward ourselves, to avoid the cognitive fusion, otherwise we're going to beat ourselves up as well. And that's the way to have good self-esteem, is not identify with our behaviour. But of course, to acknowledge if we've done something harmful, to acknowledge, I've done that harmful thing, regret that, and look to overcome that behaviour. So we can still keep a good self-esteem and not tolerate our negative behaviour. And also we can have compassion for others and at the same time not tolerate their negative behaviour and help them to address that negative behaviour. But if we do the cognitive fusion, I think you're just going to react with others and we react with ourselves. And then, of course, to also introduce some compassion and Vipashyana into daily life. So again, in terms of the Vipashyana, to really start to see that everything there in our life is a flow, this idea of impermanence. And if we can really start to see things more in a flow than sort of static, then we'll be able to go with that flow and use that flow to our advantage, to navigate rather than fight. And also this, when we see this strong grasping to self, to use the Vipashyana practice of no self to release that. And then at the deepest level, what we've seen here is that this emptiness practice in daily life is called illusory-like emptiness practice, meaning to question appearances in daily life. Particularly when we have pleasant and unpleasant things appear to us, to really question these appearances. That it really seems like the beauty, the attractiveness is there. It really seems like the unattractiveness, the ugliness is there, is to really do this questioning, to really come to see it's not there. And therefore, we can release that reaction towards that, either the craving or the aversion. And similarly, we can apply this to ourselves. If we find ourselves starting to get caught up in some mental affliction, some craving, anger, jealousy, where is the me that is getting angry or is having jealousy or a craving arising? And if we do that investigation and we don't seem to find, then that will dissipate that mental affliction. So that will help to dissipate reaction, but also that will feed back in, of course, to the emptiness meditation. So these two, space-like emptiness meditation, the illusory-like emptiness practice in daily life, will feed each other and deepen each other. Similarly, bring the compassion into daily life. So again, when we are encountering or engaging with other people, to really broaden perspective from first person to second person. So whenever we're engaging with someone else, to try to get in their shoes. How is this person seeing the situation, rather than how is this situation affecting me? And if the more we can do that, and again without the cognitive fusion, the more you'll find that instead of reacting, you'll be able to develop loving kindness and compassion in that situation. And of course, as we saw, one practical way of bringing or cultivating loving kindness and compassion throughout the day is this Glen practice. We can do this all day long, on one breath. We see someone suffering, take their suffering, give them happiness. Of course, this is not a replacement for actually helping them. But in addition, we can do this all day long, and particularly for ourselves. If we're caught up in some suffering, do the Glen practice. Instead of then reacting to that with aversion, we can use that difficult situation we're experiencing to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for ourselves and others. And then again, when we're faced with these difficult situations in our life, to really then to see them not as problems or obstacles, but as opportunities. Of course, we're not saying they're not difficult. Yes, they're difficult. But if we can see them as opportunities, at least we won't have aversion, we won't create unnecessary suffering, and often react in a way that's not really helpful, but rather we'll be able to try to work through them, developing the patience, compassion, loving kindness, and developing ourselves as a person. And then at the end of the day, then if we have time, then of course it's fantastic to do a second meditation. So if you can set up your day to do some meditation in the morning and in the evening, that's great. If you can, what I'd recommend, and I mentioned this earlier I think, is to do the Shamatha in the morning, and in the evening when you're more maybe a bit tired or so forth, do the more active meditations, the compassion, the Glen, the Vipashyana practices in the evening. But at least what we can do, all of us, every